excited to just watch Whitney's face. Especially when we get to that one part.
Not today. We're just gonna build a foundation today.
Is it in what? No? Okay.
Not in one. We're gonna get there really quick though, because it's only 4 chapters. It's only 4 chapters. It's gonna be real quick. Alright, so today we are beginning our journey through one of probably the most loved stories of the Old Testament. It's a tale of loss, a tale of loyalty, and a tale of redemption. But the story of Ruth doesn't begin with joy, it begins with emptiness. But like so many of our stories, it doesn't stay there, right? So let's begin in Ruth 1. We're going to read the first 2 verses. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the names of their 2 sons Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethany in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. Now, we kind of read that and we're like, what's the big deal? We're talking about a story about a guy who moved and he took his family with him, right? No big deal. Well, unfortunately, it's not that easy. See, it starts when the days of the judges ruled, and we don't realize how heavy a statement that would have been for the Hebrews. This was a time marked by chaos and disobedience. And Judges 21:25 tells us, everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Okay? There was no king, there was no moral compass, and the nation of Israel often spiraled into spiritual and physical hardships. They just went on a spiral round and round. And it was a time when Israel was led astray by their foreign neighbors, okay? And yet God continued to forgive them, continued to restore them over and over and over and over and over again. If you don't like repetition, don't read the book of Judges, because that's every single chapter, just over and over and over again. So against this dark and bleak background, we have the story of Ruth and Boaz. So we're introduced first to a man named Elimelech, who is from the city of Bethlehem. Yes, that Bethlehem, the same Bethlehem. And as you'll find in many Old Testament stories, names matter, especially people and places, okay? So Elimelech's name means God is king. But the ironic thing about this chapter is that he's not acting as if God is his king, okay? Instead, he's trusting his own self, and he's doing what is right in his own eyes, and he's leaving Bethlehem and moving to Moab. What seems like a logical decision, right? There's a famine, we need to move to feed ourselves, will have dramatic consequences for Elimelech and his family. So his hometown of Bethlehem means house of bread, and yet the house of bread, the shelves are empty. There is no bread in the house of bread, okay? There's a famine going on. But God specifically promised to Israel in Deuteronomy 11 that if they would remain faithful, he would provide. So if there's no provision, what can we assume?
They were
Right?
faithful.
And they're not being very faithful to God, okay? So we can see that disobedience happening. All right, so when Elimelech chooses to leave, he does so hoping for relief of the famine. I'm just going to temporarily move in order for my family to survive. But yet, the future is only loss for Elimelech. So along with him, he takes his wife Naomi, and her name means pleasant, okay? And their 2 sons. The first is Mahlon. His name is to be weak or sick. That's what they decided to name their child. The next is Chilion, and his name means failing or wasting away. So if y'all are looking for great baby names,
Why?
sick and weak and failing, we get introduced to foreshadowing. This becomes very evident in the book of Ruth. We have a son named Sick and a son named Failing Away. So we get foreshadowing and foreboding just in these first 2 verses, okay? So everything is set up for you to understand the rest of the story just by understanding the names in the first 2 verses, okay? We're also told that they're Ephrathites, meaning that they're from the tribe of Ephraim. Now, Ephraim was the 2nd son of Joseph, so not originally one of the 12. He is Jacob's grandson, and he's actually the younger of the 2, but he comes above his brother Manasseh, his older brother Manasseh, which is a theme in Genesis, which when we get to Genesis, we're going to talk about one of those themes. So the tribe of Ephraim will become a very powerful and part of the northern kingdom when the two kingdoms divide. But it will be most known for their spiritual weakness and failing. So again, another sign of foreshadowing in the story of Ruth. Alright, so Elimelech and his family, they flee to Moab, hoping to one day return to Bethlehem. And they're hoping that the famine isn't going to last that long. But this country that they flee to, Moab, isn't like us just moving to another state. This is a whole other country, and one in which this nation was deeply resentful towards the nation of Israel. Okay? They were hostile to the nation of Israel, so they literally moved into hostile territory. Okay? And the Moabs were also steeped in pagan worship. They were most famously known for their child sacrifices. They would take infants and young toddlers and sacrifice them to the fires of their gods. Most famously, before every single battle, they would offer a child sacrifice to ensure their victory on the battlefield. Okay? And this is where they choose to go.
Why?
Because they believed that a blood sacrifice of their future would ensure the gods' favor on them.
Why
That
did
if
they
you're
decide to go
willing,
there?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Out of all the countries they could have gone, this is the one that they choose.
How did they choose the child? Do you know?
I don't know. Probably the best of the lot. And
The
the
best.
families, yes, because you're ensuring if I give you my future, then you will bless me in order to continue my future. So it's kind of that ideology that you bring in best.
So you're not giving sick and fake.
I was just
You're
gonna
not
say
using
this.
Yes.
Sick and failing and get picked.
You give your best to the gods and hope that you will ensure victory.
Yeah.
Because you also have to put your faith of your future in your God's hands if you're giving over your son.
Yeah.
If you're giving over your child. Okay? So this is where Elimelech decides to go. So again, he's doing what's right in his own eyes. Okay?
Man.
Yeah. So again, this wasn't just a change of scenery for Elimelech. They are literally stepping away from the promised land. You can hear the spiritual undertones here. Just disobedience and stepping in the wrong direction. Okay? So, how many times do we take that step away? Out of God's promises, out of what God has guided us to do very clearly. Even when things look hard, we go, I think I know this is the right way, right? We think we know better than God because we can plainly, logically, this makes so much more sense. We're starving here in Israel. It's better to go where there's bread, right? God would want me to survive. This is Elimelech's decision, okay? So let's see what happens in verse 3. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died. Okay. The result of disobedience is always death. And she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of one was Orpah, the name of the other Ruth. And they lived there about 10 years. And both Mahlon and Chilion died. So that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. So that time frame of they were just going to go for the weekend, we're just going to get some bread, we're just going to survive 10 years. And it results in the death of 3 men. Okay? So, these 2 sons marry Moabite women in direct violation of God's law not to intermarry, but especially not to intermarry with the Moabites. And we get introduced to 2 women. The first one is Orpah, and in Hebrew, her name means neck or mane. Okay? And we're not sure why, but again, it's kind of foreshadowing of her future choice that we're going to see. And we're introduced to Ruth, and her name means friend. Also, another foreshadowing of her choice to come. So over time, we have both of these sons who have died, and we're left with 3 widows. Okay? And ironically, Elimelech's choice to flee to survive has resulted in his death and the death of his 2 sons. Okay? So, in the world in which Ruth and Naomi live, being a childless widow would make you completely and utterly vulnerable. They have no financial protection, no future security. They have no one to protect them, no one to provide for them. The 3 of them are alone. So Naomi is left in a foreign land, stripped of her husband, her sons, her future, everything. All she's got left is 2 Moabite daughters-in-law, and that's it. Okay? So verse 6 says, Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on their way and returned to the land of Judea. Okay? So Naomi hears that God has visited the people of Judah, that he is once again providing bread. So that whisper of hope sets her feet moving. I'm going to run back home. Okay? So she doesn't just wish things to be different. She's going to do something about her situation. And she decides that she's going to go home. Right? So, verse 8. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with me, with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them and lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, No, we will not return with you. No, we will return with you and with your people. But Naomi said, Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I should have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And she said, See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. All right. So when Naomi decides to go back to Judah, she instructs her 2 daughters-in-law, logically, to return to the homes of their fathers. They don't have husbands. They're not going to get another husband out of Naomi anytime soon. Go back home so that your parents can marry you off again. Again, very logical decisions here, okay? Very what you think would be right in your own eyes if you were the one making the decision. And she even prays over them that the God of Israel would bless them, that if they were to go home and remarry and have sons, that the God of Israel would bless them. And it sounds like a kindness for her. But we see an interesting parallel here to the opening lines. Elimelech takes his wife and his 2 sons, and they leave, and it results in death. And now Naomi is leaving, and she doesn't want to take anyone with her. And she wants to have them be blessed where they are and return to their homes. So while her desire sounds like kindness, we're actually getting a glimpse into her true thoughts. She feels that the Lord has gone out against her. That the Lord is striking her for being disobedient. And she just believes that she is too broken to bless her daughters-in-law, and that they would just be better somewhere else. So you can hear her bitterness, her resolve that there's nothing more I can do to help the 2 of you. Go help yourselves, okay? So the women weep together, and Orpah decides she's going to follow her mother-in-law's advice, and she's going to go back home, okay? So Naomi believed that her pain and her loss disqualified her from being a further blessing to these 2 women. Have you ever felt like that? You're just too broken to use, that you're just too messed up, that there is no way you could ever bless somebody else. Well, thankfully, I'll tell you a little spoiler alert, Naomi's wrong. Naomi is very, very wrong, okay? So I'm sure you all want to know what happened to Orpah, right? She's the one who goes back. We want to know what happens to her. Well, we're not sure because the Bible doesn't tell us, but because humans love to create traditions, there's actually a Jewish tradition about what happened to Orpah, okay? So the Jewish tradition says that Naomi's request for the girls to return home came 4 miles outside of Moab. So they basically made it 4 miles outside of Moab when she makes this request. And Orpah sheds 4 tears. Okay, again, they love their details, right? So we're going to just make up all these details. So the rabbis go on to say that as recompense for her 4 tears in the 4 miles that she traveled with Naomi, she gives birth to 4 sons, Goliath and 3 brothers. Except in 2 Samuel 21, we know that Goliath had 4 brothers. So, and we're not told his mother's name. That is Jewish tradition. If you were to ask a rabbi today, who was Goliath's mother, he would say Orpah. And it was her blessing for going 4 miles with Naomi. Not that we can prove it, but it's interesting.
She was blessed for going 4 miles.
Yeah, so she gets 4 sons, Goliath and his 3 brothers. If you read 2 Samuel 21, Goliath has 4 brothers. So, we shall see. That would be an interesting one to ask the Lord what happened to her. But that is Jewish tradition, and that's what the rabbis say. Huh?
Where'd the other brother come from?
I don't know, they don't explain that one.
Somebody had an affair.
I don't know. But those are the giants, Goliath and his brothers. Yes. Alright, so verse 16. But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you, for where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything, but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. Okay? So this is one of the most moving declarations in the entire Bible. Now remember, Ruth is a Moabite. She's an outsider. And yet she declares, where you go, I go. Your people are my people. Your God, my God. Nothing is going to separate us but death. You hear that covenant language? Where else do we, the only other covenant that we say if death is the only thing that hurts us? Marriage. So you hear that deep level of commitment that she has, that nothing is going to separate me from you. Wherever you go, whatever you do, I'm going. She has attached herself to Naomi. Okay? So Ruth is giving up everything. She's choosing to leave behind her gods, her home, her family, her people, everything that she has in Moab. She is going to follow after Naomi and align herself with the God of Israel. Okay? Naomi believes she has nothing to offer Ruth. Okay? But Ruth has been introduced to the one true God of Israel, and she clings to that more than anything else. Okay? Verse 19. So the 2 of them went on their way until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi, when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought upon me calamity?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So Naomi and Ruth, they go back to Bethlehem. This is her hometown, okay? And their arrival just stirs the whole village. It's a really, really tiny village, okay? It would be like she coming back to Middleburg, okay? Little bitty tiny village. So if you know anything about small town gossip, they literally just walk into the middle of town and everybody knows it, okay? Everybody knows everybody's business in Bethlehem, okay? But when they come out to greet her, to welcome her back home, she tells them, "Don't call me Naomi," meaning pleasant. Call me Mara, which is bitterness. So now her bitterness is spilled over into, she wants to change her name. She wants to be called Mara. And can I give you another spoiler alert? No one in this whole story ever calls her Mara. Not the Lord, not her friends. She's the only one who is identifying in this bitterness, but no one else identifies her as this, okay? She feels that God has dealt very bitterly with her. She's completely empty-handed. She has suffered so much loss for the last 10 years. She lost her husband. She lost her 2 sons. Her other daughter-in-law is back home now, going to go marry somebody else, and all she's got left is this little Moabite woman who won't leave her alone, okay? And she goes back home, and this is it. At least she's honest about her pain. She doesn't hide it, and she's returning home. She doesn't stay in Moab, and she's not empty-handed. She has this little foreign woman whose chief desire is just to be counted with her and her people. So Naomi's faith is bitter in this hard season, but it isn't gone, okay? She still acknowledges the God of Israel. She still acknowledges the God of Israel is at work. She just can't see what he's planning to do with her yet. And with Ruth, this little Moabite woman who won't leave her alone. So this chapter ends with a quiet spark of hope. They came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Now that's not a coincidence, and it's not an offhand comment about agriculture, okay? First of all, that barley is back. The famine is over, so Israel must be doing something right again, okay? And two, God is preparing for Naomi and Ruth to return at the exact moment he is going to use them, right at the beginning of the barley harvest. If you know the rest of the story, that becomes incredibly, hingingly important to the rest of the story. That barley harvest has started, okay? These two women don't quite see yet what the Lord is doing, but we will in the rest of their story. So we all face famines, spiritually, emotionally, financially, and sometimes we try to fix it because we think we know better. And we usually find ourselves a lot further away than where we're supposed to be, okay? But the way back to God just starts with a single step. It just took Naomi one decision to just say, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go in the right direction. Now, this wasn't the whole journey, and it doesn't make the road home any less painful, but it is a step in the right direction. So Naomi walked that very long road back home, not because she had all the answers, but because she knew where to turn, okay? If God was providing for his people in Israel again, maybe there would be a few crumbs for Naomi if she went back home to the house of bread. Perhaps she was righting her husband's wrong, but regardless, the direction shows us that while she was very bitter, very raw from all that she had lost, she was returning to her home, to her God, to her people, not turning away from him. She could have just stayed in Moab, but she doesn't. So we get a glimpse of what might have drawn Ruth the Moabite to Israel, to the God of Israel. Naomi could honestly pour out her heart before God without receiving judgment. Because let me tell you, if you tried to say those things to the Moabite gods, they would not be very happy with you. You didn't say honestly and bitterly that you've struck your hand against me to a Moabite god. But here, she is being shown that Naomi, a woman, can cry out to the Lord. Say, why have you dealt so bitterly with me? Bringing her honesty before the Lord without fear of judgment. So her faith is shaken and it's taken a huge hit, but it's still there. And it's very, very real. So remember, real faith, not perfect faith. Naomi had far from perfect faith. Real faith is what's going to draw other people to the Lord. So Naomi's godly repentance and honesty will make a difference not only in her life, but in the life of her daughter-in-law Ruth, and the destiny of the entire nation of Israel, and in our eternal salvation.